Welcome to the Unnamed Reverse Engineering Podcast. I'm here at Chaos Camp 2019. I think it's just 2019.
Yeah, that's the way I've been seeing it.
I don't know if it has a number. It's not like 35C3 or whatever. And I'm here with, is it
Johnny Christmas.
Johnny Christmas, all right.
Hey, really cool to be here.
Yeah, I know this. I've been having a blast. This is the first show I'm recording here. Jen, unfortunately, the co-host, my co-host, couldn't make it. But yeah, we met last night at
Whiskey Leaks.
Whiskey Leaks, yes.
Yeah, where I was handing out Malört, which is not a whiskey.
I have heard of Malört. I have seen people's reactions to Malört, and therefore I did not try Malört.
Oh, it's so unfortunate. It's such a life-changing experience.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, but not in a good way, I don't think. Well, no. It was at Jenny List really liked it.
Yeah, so. Yeah, she did. I was attracted over by the Marmite, but the threat of Marmite, which I actually like, and that was the trick. And I said, oh, this group's going to like Malört.
And one person did.
It's good. It was Jenny. Jenny loved it.
Yeah, it was surprising.
So that was pretty fun. I love giving people Malört. It's a Chicago distilled wormwood liqueur. It's only distributed in Chicago. So whenever I travel,
I
like
have to get it there.
Yeah, right. So whenever I travel, I try to bring a couple of bottles to expose the rest of the world to it. And the reactions are just phenomenal.
Yep, I can attest to that. Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your background?
I can tell you a lot about myself.
Oh, well, let's...
Yeah, what's the short version? So I've been, probably like every guest on your podcast, hacking my entire life. As far back as I can remember. Yeah. If I was just talking with someone, in fact, about the first computer I had was the Magnavox Odyssey 2, which I think came out in 1978. I went to pharmacy school on a music scholarship, and here I am.
as one does.
As one does.
A common path to hacking.
The huge.
Yeah.
Hacking the whole time. Got a job at the pharmacy to start trying to build that career up, but it was boring as hell. And in the meantime, it was also part-time, so I got a part-time IT job just working at the college help desk. And that was, late 90s, early 2000s. So you know what happened around then. Computers became ubiquitous. And it's funny, I remember having a conversation with my dad in the kitchen about he had an in for the telephone company, like POTS system, to be a line walker, which is the guys who repair and replace the telephone lines. And I could get in as a journeyman, in the union, which is a big deal. And I was telling him, look, I really think computers are going to be the way to go. I think computers.
No, POTS.
Right, and he was like, "Are you sure?" And we had a multi-hour conversation, making sure I had my facts straight about computers. And this is back when we still used computers as the phrase, like an overarching umbrella. Yeah. Well, just computers. What do you do? Oh, I do computers.
I am a computer programmer.
Yeah. Now you see computers today, people go, well, yeah.
Which one?
So does my mom. What do you do? Yeah, and so that was my hard life decision was, well, do I want to stay in IT or do I want to go repair landlines for life?
Yeah.
Which, now, at the time it was funny.
I think you made the right call.
Yeah, at the time I already had a cell phone in my pocket because I was also working at like a cell phone and pager store part-time. So I had like 3 jobs.
At the same time you were a pharmacist?
Yeah, I was
at the pharmacy, yeah.
Yeah, because we had the rule in the house was if you're not currently enrolled in school,
you're working?
You're paying rent. And so
hey.
Yeah, and so that was like an off semester. I was working these 3 jobs and realizing how expensive life is. And so I just stuck like with IT because the pays got really good and I really, really, really liked it because I'd been doing computers like my whole life anyway to that point and making them do things they shouldn't do just kind of out of inherent passion. That was just how I was. And come 2011 or so, the Target breach happened and information security as a career path became more ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And companies started actually having entire teams, and so I was able to move into security that way. You know, I had a friend who said, "Hey, do you know anybody has IT experience, but maybe is like a hobby hacker, like is into hacking as like a hobby?" And I was like, "I think I do."
It's me.
And, yeah. And then, long story short, here I am. I've done everything from defensive engineering to principal architecture to. Are these kids too loud?
That's fine.
Okay.
Well, we'll just leave them in.
Yeah.
We should explain we're at the dock, I guess.
Yeah, I was wondering if we were going to tell everyone about that.
Yeah, we're next to the water here, and there's some sailboats, and then there's some kids fishing, I think?
I don't know. They're just dragging I think they just have fishing weights they're dragging around in the water. This is very cool, though.
There are fish. I have confirmed there's fish in there.
Oh, they might be fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fishing.
Yeah,
we'll talk about fishing later, too. But
we're in, yeah. We're in the woods. We're literally in the woods. This is so cool. I'll throw a picture on Twitter of us out here. On the docks.
I'll put it on the. I'll link to it in the show notes as usual.
It's so weird that we ended up here. You know, we both operate in the information security / hacking space. You know,
in rural Germany.
And we're in rural Germany. We're about an hour north of Berlin. And I was an Eagle Scout. I was a Boy Scout.
Oh, cool.
And so camping was my life for a very long period as well. And so now I've combined like two of those things I've been doing my entire life. Like Chaos Computer Camp. Is it Chaos Computer Camp or Chaos Communication Camp?
So
I can't get a straight
answer.
answer.
Club, right?
Right. So is this the Chaos Computer Camp? Because there's the Chaos Communication Congress.
Yeah.
Is the con.
I would say Communication Camp. Yeah.
It's CC Camp.
But I'm not an official spokesman, so.
Yeah. But anyway, we're out here camping. It is a camp. There's 6,000 tents here, caravans, outhouses.
Everything, tents.
Yeah, you're camping.
Hammocks.
And at the same time, you're getting out of your tent to go to a workshop on terraforming and Docker.
There was one about adding an extra thumb to your hand.
Yeah.
That looks pretty cool.
In the middle of rural Germany.
Yeah, it's an experience. I literally saw a sign in someone's tent that said, we will reverse engineer anything with IDA and Python. With IDA, just call this extension. So I'm going to have to call them later and see if they want to come on the show.
You just show up with
whoever
stuff.
I'm just going to call and be like, hey, I have a podcast.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
We'll see. But anyway, you were saying after the target breach.
Oh, yeah, so we all were able to do this, and then I've just had my whole information security career from there, from defensive engineering, security architect, was a penetration tester for several years. And then I dabbled in ICS security.
That's in
for a while. Industrial control systems.
Yeah.
Is that realm a mess? Like industrial control systems, and then subsequently critical infrastructure.
Yeah, security is like what? What is that?
A nightmare. Well, it was because for the longest time, the regulatory systems surrounding those infrastructures
made it hard to even change.
Well, they required air gapping. They said you cannot connect this equipment.
And they thought they were safe because they were air gap until Stuxnet.
Right, and then that combined with the general engineering mentality of the industrial realm, which is if it's not broke, don't fix it, and don't change anything if it doesn't need to be changed. So things like patching are like, well, no, it doesn't.
You have to change out.
It doesn't modify any functionality, so we're not going to take the risk of taking the system down, patching it, because then you have to go through all of this QA testing, and it's a big ordeal. It's not like IT where you just. Oh, if it doesn't work, you just roll it back.
Oh, and if it breaks, it might literally make something explode, right?
Yeah, it might something explode, it might kill somebody. That's like ICS, the ICS realm is like where the phrase safety third comes from. Because the safety is the third most important thing in their list of things that are important. One of the first things one of the first naive comments I had made when working in ICS was, after talking to a lot of these engineers, I go, look, nobody's going to listen to us about security, I think, until somebody dies. And one of the engineers goes, no, people die here all the time. And it's not because of security, it's just because of the inherent insafety of working with like huge machines or something. Like, when I'm talking about like literally securing conveyor belts in coal mines, like people die in coal mines daily. So come up with something else.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's crazy.
It is crazy. It will keep you up at night. I don't recommend working in ICS unless you have a real passion for the industrial sector. It's like all of information security. It's unfortunate knowledge.
And I guess your threat model probably includes nation states more than like script kiddies, because nobody can get an ICS to play with.
Right. Oh, it's predominantly nation state.
Which then you're like, well, I can secure it as best I can, but still nation state resources.
And you're up against nation states like Iran, Mossad. You know, like, and you're not going to stop the Mossad. You know, and in IT information security, you have like, oh, you're not going to stop a human attacker. You can't stop an intelligent attacker, but you can stop, all the automated crap. On the ICS side, it's like, well, you can't stop the Mossad. You can't stop, the Israeli hackers.
Good luck.
And so you have to deal with that, but it's like, well, does that mean you shouldn't try? Well, no. Because also it's not necessary that the Mossad is targeting me either, but there's a lot of collateral damage that happens in that realm. I mean, if you look, the ubiquitous example in that realm is Stuxnet. And if you look at how prolific Stuxnet became outside of the ICS world, like they were finding the Stuxnet virus on, it got loose and it had infected, and it at least didn't do anything malicious to anything that wasn't, a nuclear facility. It was still there.
That
and it got out.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think that was great for everyone to know that, okay, this is happening, this has been happening, watch out.
Yeah, and the U.S. helped create that, and that opened a lot of eyes.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wait, it's not some kid in a basement in Brazil?
No. What happens when you invest millions of dollars to, get something like that done?
And how it worked was really cool.
Yeah.
And they were inspired by dryers, like clothes dryers, to craft that because it affected the functionality of the centrifuge.
Yeah, no, I like, I think Mikko Huppanen did a TED Talk about it.
Oh, yeah. There's been a trillion talks about it.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that was one of the early ones, but I recommend people check out, I don't know if the wiki page is the best one, but it's a good...
The wiki page is always a great place to start for anything. The Wikipedia rabbit hole is the reason none of us sleep.
Was it you or somebody was telling me yesterday? Oh no, I think it might have been Dominic about asking people their favorite Wikipedia articles. It's a very interesting way of meeting folks. But yeah, no, I think it was
That's
Dominic.
A good one.
Yeah.
You should start doing that instead of the tool thing.
Oh, well, mine's reverse engineering related. It's like, what's your favorite reverse engineering related Wikipedia article?
Yeah.
People are going to be like,
Yeah, right. I don't know.
So yes, what is your...
No, I got nothing on that. Because I predominantly, like if we're talking about what I reverse engineer, it's like APIs, it's applications and like web applications. And so my Wikipedia article is the HTTP spec. And really
true.
It's TCP, the HTTP section of TCP.
So documentation mostly.
Yeah, really, it's just documentation because everything has to work to a specific standard or the whole internet breaks down.
Yeah.
And so you can at least very much rely on things being compliant with that standard. That's not to say they're always 100%, but you at least have a really good shot at it if you know the standard really well.
So how did you get started in the API reversing? Like, what's that like?
Oh, just being a punk. Like people ask me all the time, like, how'd you get started in InfoSec? Because nowadays everyone wants to get in InfoSec.
Yeah, but now people do it because of the money or because of the name.
And that sounds cool. Predominantly, I guess. Hey, how do I get to be a pen tester? Or how did you get to be a pen tester? Because they want to also do the same thing, and I go,
the hard way.
It's just being a punk, I guess.
Yeah.
Think about it. It's like, I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing to systems I had no permission to be touching for most of my life. Do that, except don't do that.
Definitely don't do it, and definitely don't get caught.
Because your chance.
Now they're gonna catch. Like it's much easier to catch right now.
Right. Yeah. Back in the day, we were still dumpster diving. Back in the day, they were still printing credit card numbers on receipts.
Oh no, they wouldn't even print it. They would just do the.
Oh, and they were
carbon.
the old impressioning ones.
Yeah.
Wow, we're old.
I recently still used one of those like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, the internet was down, so they're like, oh. But now my credit card doesn't have the punch-through numbers.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no raised numbers on credit cards anymore, so you can't impression those.
Yeah.
And that's why they stopped doing the raised numbers, was to stop the impressioning. That was the only way they could figure out to, because you can make all the laws you want to tell people not to do things, but we see how well that works.
No, the credit card companies just take charge and be like, all right,
like,
now.
Nope, no more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they also don't want the paper documents. Like the only reason you would impression the card is to send to the credit card company and go, look, here's the evidence that I did in fact have that card in my physical presence.
But it
now
could
the
be
credit
fake
card
now.
companies are like, no, we don't want that. Don't mail us paper.
Well, they're the ones that are trying to implement more security around all the point of sale systems because they're the ones losing money. Well, they're the ones that would do it, right? Like if I know a lot of people are out of compliance, if you will, with them, right? Like, but they're the ones that said they're like, hey, if you're storing credit card number, well, first of all, don't. Yeah. But if you are,
right,
you have to be, doing this, and that, and then people just run Windows XP in a text file. And
well, it's because this goes back to the ICS stuff, actually.
They're still making more money than it's worth.
The POS systems that they're using are effectively they're industrial systems. They're systems that are put in place and they serve one function and they work, and as long as they work, you don't touch them.
It, yeah.
And they're often not even connected to, well, I don't want to say often, sometimes they're not connected to the same IT network.
Not Target,
IT,
yeah.
They're almost never managed by IT. And that's because
it could be a corner shop, right? Like,
yeah, and even though they're running XP, they're running. It's not XP. It's not. You don't join it to your domain.
Yeah.
You often don't even know it's running XP because as soon as it boots up, you get your POS GUI, and you can't just push patches to it because it's it's all these
managed.
custom binaries,
Yeah.
right? And so that's where the problem comes in. But because it's this register, it's this piece of equipment, it's like store equipment. Nobody thinks of it as a computer; they think of it as a machine.
It's a tool,
and it works, and so we leave it alone. Nobody realizes that, well, the software on this machine was written by somebody who has no concept or care of security. They wanted to get it done as quickly as possible and make it accomplish the necessary tasks as cheaply and, like I said, quickly as possible. And so then you end up with a system that, writes plain text credit card numbers to a flat file on the XP desktop that the user of the system never sees, but somebody who gets in via the back end because MS 08067 still works.
Yeah.
Can just go list all the files in the desktop and go, oh, cool, here's all the credit card transactions for the day. Yeah, and that's what's happening there.
I've gotten busted by those, like a car wash in Texas, or a chain of car washes.
Yeah.
I ended up on one of those lists, and then it's like, oh, credit card canceled, boom.
Gas stations are a big one.
Well, there's all the skimmers now, too.
Right, yeah. Anytime I drive through Indiana, my credit card gets stolen. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, and I know it's from the gas pumps. And I check them, man. You grab everything and wiggle everything, but it's so easy to implant a skimmer inside of a gas pump because the key is universal.
Oh, anyone can just open them?
Anyone can file their own key for a gas pump and open it up and put your skimmer inside. There's a lot of universal keys like that out there. It's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, there's a great talk Deviant Ollam did. I forget which one. All about opening doors and how lockpicking's the last thing you do. Mm-hmm. And there's
Absolutely.
a million ways that are easier. And many of them are just, oh, this is the same key for every file cabinet everywhere.
Yeah, right.
Or cop cars, they all have the same key. A lot of the cruisers.
He and I carry a very similar key set on us, and it's all those universal keys. And to be fair, I pretty much lifted mine from him. But yeah, it's great. He's not kidding. There's a lot of keys I have that you just try it. You go, let's see. Oh, it's a wafer lock. Let me try this key, and then it works. And you're like, what the hell? And there's vehicles that use wafer locks as for the ignition system. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. It's usually industrial vehicles and tractors and things like that. But
people don't think to steal them, but they could.
I have over 80 universal keys specifically for industrial equipment, for industrial vehicles.
Is this back from the pen testing days?
No, no. This is just this is back to hobby. Yeah, this is just being like I didn't have the need to steal anything industrial in the pen testing days, though if I did need to. I certainly had the keys. Deviant actually told me a story once of when he was just looking for an opportunity to use a cherry picker, which is one of those big jacks that lifts you up really high.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, he saw one outside. He's like, I got the key for that. I'm going to figure out a reason to use that on this engagement. And he used it to like get in through a roof hatch.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no.
And not that he needed to. he was like,
Just wanted to go up on the thing.
I'm going to figure out a reason to have this.
Shoot, we didn't think to protect that. And like, well.
Yeah. And the bottom line is that I bought those keys. I bought them on Amazon. I bought all of them as a whole kit, all 80 keys on Amazon.
It's like the TSA keys, right? They put the pictures on them.
Well, if you want to talk about that, is that why you brought me on? To talk about the TSA keys? Did you know I was involved in that?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, I did not. You just started talking about keys and like being able to get them online, and I was like, oh, like the TSA photos.
Yeah. If we're talking about reversing, so what had happened with those was, the pictures, originally, the picture was, this is years ago now and I have to remember the full story, but the picture was printed in a promotional catalog that the company who made the keys used to shop themselves around to other companies who might need keys of that nature made. Keys and locks. They developed the keys and locks system.
But they literally used the...
And they put that picture in there and they're like, yeah, we made these for the TSA. I believe it was they had the picture on their website in their catalog, and you couldn't access the website without having a valid credentials to log in, but you could register.
Like a business?
If you had a business email address, you could register for an account, and they would just give it to you. And I think it was IronGeek who used a yahoo.in, like an Indian Yahoo account, and they accepted that because they didn't recognize yahoo.in as a publicly available email TLD. Domain. And so then he got in and he was looking around and he found these and he's like, hey, here's some pictures of TSA keys. There was also one other picture that floated around that was on some dude's Instagram. And none of his other pictures were anything like that. Like, I think all his other pictures were just like his kids playing in the yard and crap.
But then there was
this picture of these TSA keys. Yeah.
Weird.
And if you Google like TSA keys in an image search, like that's one of the first images that still comes up, and you can see its little square picture with the rounded edges because of Instagram. And like people have pinged him and he's not responded on it. And
so nobody knows
who this guy is or why he put that picture on his Instagram. But that was the other one. But then they put those images were out there and people are like, you could just file keys down. Some of them were non-standard. They weren't just like, regular 6-pin locks and stuff. Like the 004 has the little like hammerhead shape on it. And so they're like, well, if we don't know the exact size of those, we can't really do anything. So whatever. This guy Xylitol from France, who is an active CAD designer, for fun, took that picture, just again as a hobbyist, took that picture and created 3D models of those keys and threw them up on his, I think he put them on his Thingiverse and his GitHub. Yeah. And that news got out pretty fast and I was like, oh cool. And I'm an active CAD designer and 3D printer guy. And I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna try these out. And also, an active physical security guy. So this was all up my alley. Like I dropped everything that day and I got in on this. And as soon as I loaded the file up, I was like, these aren't going to be big enough. And I printed them and I'm like, no, the dimensions on these are way off. And it was because Xylitol didn't know. He didn't have access to these keys or locks. He was going off a picture. What was important was that his ratios between everything were right. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, so all we got to do is just adjust the ratios on these. And so I started playing with that a ton, and I was able to develop the first working set of 3D printable TSA keys.
Oh, nice.
Based off of his original work. And
you just got some locks to test on?
And then it was a matter of like, well, let's get all these locks to test on. And that was a hard part too. Because generally if you go into the store, you're only going to find 2 models, maybe 3 max. And so we had to pool all our resources of all our lockpicking friends together and go, who's got what, who sees what. And we put tweets out saying, hey, if you see an 006 in the wild, please purchase it. I will reimburse you and I'll pay for you to ship it to me and I'll give you a prize.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And at the time, the 006s were only installed in luggage. They were hard, like physically installed in luggage. You couldn't purchase an 006 lock back then. Oh. And it was a company called Rimowa, which had really nice luggage.
So you need to buy a piece of luggage.
Right, but then you have to buy multiple pieces of luggage. You don't want to trust that there's only one version of that. So we didn't know much about all this.
Yeah.
And yeah, so anyway, we put those calls out, and people started sending us locks and finding locks, and we found out, all right, some of the keys were like way off. And so I kept tweaking those to get them right. And then we discovered one of the big problems was that the tolerances inside the locks themselves, the manufacturing tolerances were super wide or really not provided.
Yeah.
So you could have a really tight, like on spec 003, and you could have an 003 that you can open by blowing into it really hard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you could open it with a screwdriver, just wiggling it around. So, and then combined with the inherent problems of 3D printing, which is the thickness that your filament ends up solidifying at varies greatly based on the environment around it, you know?
Did you just cast them, or were you using the plastic?
No, I was using melted plastic 3D printing, layer by layer style.
And it won't snap when you try to wiggle the lock?
If you use ABS, you can get anywhere between 4 and 10 uses. It depends which key and stuff like that.
But still.
You're not going to get 100.
But you need one,
Yeah,
right?
and so it was funny because the bottom line with the whole 3D printing scandal was it's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Like, there's better ways to do this, which goes back down to, for most of the keys, you can just get blanks and then file your own down, which is actually really easy. People think filing your own keys is some, like, movie magic that you have to be a master at to... No, anyone can do this.
You just need the right tools. And
the right tools is like
a file?
Yeah, a really nice file is like $9, you know? Yeah, and then you can get blanks from you can go to Home Depot and get blanks. Yeah, and so, but then there was the really oddly shaped ones, and people have cut their own, like from pressed steel, and literally carved their own out. And there's some functional ones. I think IronGeek has a full set now. But yeah, bottom line is we got this working. I have 3D printed every TSA key and verified that it did work.
Yeah.
Those keys are on my repo. They've been there forever. And they're also back. So then I sent a PR back to Xylitol's repo saying, hey, I fixed all the keys. And he accepted that pull request.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he eventually just made me like an admin over on his GitHub. But yeah, so if you go to my GitHub or Xylitol's GitHub, the 3D printable TSA key files are there. And so, like, even though I said 3D printing them is kind of dumb just because of the resiliency and the printing problem, they're CAD files, which means you have precise dimensions.
You could machine it.
So you could do whatever you want with those.
What's your GitHub, by the way?
It's GitHub/JohnnyChristmas.
Okay, I'll link to it as well.
Yeah, I got a bunch of weird tools in there. Yeah, so there's an RE story for you that we reversed the TSA keys.
I did not know that you were involved with that. It was you totally.
That's funny. I was probably the loudest person about the whole thing. I'm just generally a loud.
What year was
person.
this?
2014 through 2018.
Wow.
So here, an addendum. There's an addendum to that whole story. So the original keys we printed is 001 through 007 were the ones that were in the pictures. There were there was one, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting now. There was at least one other key that was not. Yeah, it's a Safe Skies key. So there's another key that wasn't in that picture at all.
How are those acquired? Or made, I guess.
This is a cool story. So we said, hey, we've got all the TSA keys, but that were made by this one company. But there's a Safe Skies that was also authorized by the TSA to make another locking system.
Is that a company name?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was no images of these keys anywhere. We looked, and so this guy, a friend of mine, Night Owl and DarkSim, sat down and said, you know, all right, we're just going to get a bunch of Safe Skies locks, and we're going to take them all apart, and we're going to reverse a master key, literally by looking at all the pinouts. And the idea is if you can buy enough locks,
you can get a map.
Yeah, and there's an algorithm for this. If you have enough pinouts and you know there's a master key, you can infer that master key from all of the various pinouts that you collect. And the more pinouts you collect, the better your chances. Yeah, and the problem is, unless you know you have 100% of the pinouts, you never know if you have the official actual master key.
But you could have a master key that covers X% of locks.
Right. Right. But you would like to be able to say this is a master key that covers all locks.
Yeah, but you need a perfect sample.
Yeah, and this is all. This is exactly the same way that like PKI works. And we actually, the whole reason we did this was to show at the time. You know what? Let me cover that later. Let's go back. Let me finish this story.
Yeah.
So they bought a bunch of locks, and Night Owl set to work. He, sawed open one of the chambers and started looking the pinouts. So he, there's combination TSA locks, but they still have a keyway on them so that the TSA can use a master key to open it without having to know your combination.
Yeah.
That's why. But you don't get a key with those locks.
No, you just get the lock, yeah.
So he had gotten some Safe Skies locks that had a key with them. They're a combination and they had a key, if I recall. Either way, they definitely had a key with them. He's like, oh, okay. And he opens one up and he goes, okay, cool. He's got the pin out and marks that down. He opens another one out and it's the same key. And he starts looking at all and they all have the same key.
So it's not even a
and he's like,
variation.
Yeah. And long story on that short, he determined, he was able to figure out that Safe Skies made the ultimate PKI screw up, which is using the master key
forever. As the key.
As the key for, yeah. Wow. And I'm like, again, I apologize. I didn't have the details for this ready because I didn't know we were going to talk about it.
Oh no, yeah. I can link to them if I find them.
I presented a talk at Hope in 2016 on this. We did a panel on everything where we also,
cool.
And that's where we dropped the Safe Skies lock or master key. So, and we explained the whole process of reversing it there. So you can even just link to the, that would be panel awesome. And it's in there. But I think it was, maybe one of them did ship with the master key and that's what it was. And he realized this key was functional in all the locks that he had. And he was like, oh no, they used the master key as one of the keys that they shipped. Safe Skies effectively leaked the master key to the public by way of coupling it with the locks. Yeah. And so he didn't even have to do a ton of work to reverse it. He just stumbled across the master keys because they sold it to him.
Whoops.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how that went down. And then we went and someone on the internet quickly made a 3D design of that one, and I confirmed that it worked, and we were just done. And we're like, now we officially have all of the keys, not just the ones that were leaked in that photograph.
And did they change anything or?
No, hell no.
They don't care.
They don't care. Right. And like multiple journalists, this hit the news. This was big news. This was I was on Fox News for this. That was kind of weird. I was on CNN. And so of course they go to the TSA and go, hey, what's your take on this?
Yeah.
And the TSA's official take was, we don't care because we're not here to keep your luggage safe. We're here to get into your luggage.
Yeah.
If we had our druthers, we'd say no one's allowed to lock their luggage. The existence of the keys is only there as a compromise to say, all right, we'll let you lock your stupid toothbrush and your underwear up, but you have to give us a master key.
Let us open it,
Yeah. And so to go back to what I was saying before, the reason we were doing this wasn't to allow thieves to lick your toothbrush. Because really, I mean, what do you got in your luggage that's that valuable?
Yeah,
anyway?
no.
Like, you're going to have your wallet on
yourself.
you. You're going to have your expensive watch on you.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't put jewelry in your luggage. Just don't bring it with you. You don't need it.
I agree.
As we sit here literally on the floor on a dock in the middle of the woods, like, you don't need a whole lot of stuff to have a good time, guys.
No, absolutely not.
We did it because, if you'll recall, right around that time, there was a shooting in, I believe, Texas. I think it was the Air Force Base shooting in Texas. And the government, and specifically the FBI, was pushing super, super hard for master keys to our communications.
Oh,
to our message.
Hey, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, and I mean, they're still doing it to date. And it's really great because at the time, Apple told them to F off.
Yeah.
And now Apple has come so much further, especially with the advent of iOS 13, which is only in beta at the time of this recording, with doing so much more to prevent the FBI from getting in, which I think is just absolutely amazing. And so it was a big thing at the time, and you have a lot of Americans who don't understand technology, who don't understand the risks of providing a master key for all encryption to the FBI. And so we were like, we have this amazing opportunity for providing a physical, tangible way of understanding private key infrastructure to the general public, because everyone understands physical keys and their house. And
since the TSA has a master key now, anyone else could have it too.
Right. And now
Here it is.
Everyone has it.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, TSA, what are you going to do to protect our stuff now that you have
They didn't want to protect it in the first place.
Right, they didn't want to protect it in the first
exact same.
Right, which is the same. Exactly. The FBI, if the FBI had their druthers, they would say, no encryption for anybody.
I think they have said that.
They're
everyone except the government.
Right. Yeah, they have said that there's no laws. So Australia is fighting with that right now because the government has
the law of Australia. I think he said the laws of mathematics are commendable, but the law of Australia is the rule of the land.
Right.
It's just like, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that was the Prime Minister of Australia that said that. I might be wrong, but
I have to go down there a lot for work, and their government's interesting. and they're all very. It's interesting because all of the IT folks are very upset with the government because the government's making very poor decisions.
Yeah, that's well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's that.
So yeah, that was the whole point of that. That's the TSA Key story.
Oh, that's what I'm glad wow. Yeah, no, I just you said something about keys, and then I was like, oh yeah, the TSA keys.
Yeah, and I don't bring it up lately because it's after talking about it for years and years. It's if I bring it up, it's like beating a dead horse.
Yeah.
But you brought it up like it was applicable. This is a reverse engineering podcast.
Yeah,
it's a story that was all over the news that most people haven't heard. So I'll talk about it here. Yeah.
I hope people have heard of it, but if not, now you have.
Yeah. People ask me like, hey, where have I seen you before? And you if
CNN.
Yeah, if it's not at an InfoSec con, I'll be like, oh, Fox, CNN, I've been on there a few times. Remember the TSA keys thing? And generally
nope.
they go, no. Well,
oh, wow. Right. Yeah, no, I remember. Maybe it's because I follow Deviant and them on Twitter. Yeah.
For that. Yeah.
So yesterday you also mentioned this. I was telling you I like to ask what the people's favorite tools are.
Yeah.
And first you mentioned some sync tool, like some plumbing.
Oh yeah.
I did not specify the reverse engineering part of it, but I'm curious to hear what that is.
Yeah. So you ask, you just go up to people and you go, "What's your favorite tool?"
I think there's a podcast for that, like a separate, the Cool Tools podcast.
Cool Tools, the Tool Time podcast.
Yeah.
And so in a hacker realm, especially here at camp, where they take they have the most liberal use of the word hacker, because everyone hacks everything here. From, there's biohackers to eco hackers to the computer hacking is I don't want to say a small portion, but just a portion of what's going on. So when you go, what's your favorite tool? You're going to get someone who's like, needle nose forceps or something.
Hey.
And so you asked me what's my favorite tool, and I was like, when you got to replace the faucet in your sink, and you've got like a really deep sink in the kitchen, and you can't get around to the back of the sink because you've got the wall and then the back of the sink, and you can't get your hand up there to reach the nut that holds the faucet on. There's a tool for that, and it's got a bunch of hinges in there, and it's made specifically for this, and it's a pipe wrench, and it's hinged in weird ways, and you can tighten the pipe wrench using a little spinny thing way on the bottom of the handle instead of way up towards the top where you can't reach.
Transfers
and
over.
It'll grab that nut, and you can twist it a weird way. It's kind of like an oil filter wrench for cars, if you've ever seen those, because you can bend it at a right angle or whatever angle you need and still get the torque in the right direction.
Yeah, I've recently used a ratcheting wrench with 2 knuckles, I guess. And it's a pain to use, but it lets you do things that you couldn't do otherwise.
Exactly, and that's like this tool is for this one purpose.
And
it is a
else.
single-purpose tool. It's a faucet wrench. I think that's what it's called. And I was like,
I'll search around and see if I can link to something like that.
Yeah, go do that. And I'm like, that's my favorite tool. And I don't know why I thought of that, because you just said, what's your favorite tool? And that was the first tool that came to mind. And I was like, well, it must be this one.
It's like, that's cool, man.
And you're like, yeah, that's all well and good, but I don't care.
I didn't quite say that.
That's not at all what I needed from you.
How about reverse engineering tools? But you did mention another really cool one that they use for API stuff.
Yeah, so we started talking about how I had reversed the Venmo public feed API, and I had developed some tools for use in doing that. And I have a really cool tool I use for the purpose of developing tools for doing HTTP based, like for attacking web servers, and it's called Postman. And a lot of people know Postman because it's a tool used for many other things. And effectively, it helps you handle HTTP requests. And it gives you all the headers and things like that. It allows you to modify them before you're sending them. And it gives you full inspection into what you're receiving back. And it's kind of like, every browser now, well, Chrome and Firefox at least, and a few others have like the inspection panel where you can take a look at all that. Yeah, and that's cool. That doesn't really allow you to modify anything. It just lets you see what's going on. And it's nice. It's there. Postman was developed to be like Inspector Tool++. It's got all that. It's got a ton more. It allows you to craft custom requests and test them all inside of one GUI really easily. So it's really good if you're trying to reverse something where you're not sure what a lot of the things you're sending do, and you're trying to compare them alongside the response really quickly and easily. Just, see what changed.
Yeah.
Especially now with the community edition of Burpsuite being super nerfed and practically useless, Postman is a really, really, really great tool.
Oh, is it a free tool, like open source?
Yeah, it's free. I'm not sure if it's open source. It might be, given that they've developed it for like every platform ever, and usually when that's the case, they're also like big FOSS people.
Because I have heard of Burpsuite. I've never used it. I know it's popular.
Yeah, Burpsuite generally, it was more of an auditing and attack tool. Pen testers primarily use it for reversing, like I was doing. It's okay. It's cumbersome. It's not laid out great for that. So Postman was a really good tool I was turned on to for this. My absolute favorite part of Postman, for the purposes of creating tools to attack APIs or whatever aspects of the web server that you're trying to hit via HTTP, is it will generate code snippets for you for whatever language you're writing your tool in. This is a practically unknown feature of Postman. I've done workshops on using Postman to abuse web servers.
Yeah.
And you'll get a room full of people who have all used Postman.
Yeah.
They're very familiar because this is what they do all day. I've been given workshops on web scraping to people whose job at their company is to scrape competitors' websites, which is really cool. Like corporate espionage is super real, folks.
Well, I mean, if it's public info.
Yeah. Right.
But still, just information, yeah.
And so I go, do you guys all know how to generate the code snippets? And the room just goes blank. And I'm like, check this out. And it's a hyperlink in the GUI, that already breaks 60 rules in GUI design. It's a hyperlink in the middle of the GUI off to the right-hand side, and it is 4 letters, CODE, and it's slightly brighter than the background of the GUI.
So you just have to click by mistake, pretty much.
You don't know it's there. It's a horrible place to put it. It's probably up in the menus somewhere too. I don't even know. It's in the worst possible place, and it's the best feature. And you click code. So once you've got your post request set up where you go, this is what I need to recreate 1,000 times to do whatever I'm doing.
You have like a variable somewhere, I guess, right?
Yeah, Well, you'll do your variables within your Python script or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So you set up a functional post request. You go, this one works. And now all I got to do is with every request change these 2 headers or something, and I can do that in Python. But you're in Postman trying to figure out that one request that's going to work. You're troubleshooting the communication to make sure you figure out exactly what needs to be done inside your code that you're writing in JavaScript or Python or whatever. Then once you've got that, you just click code and you click Python, and it gives you a full Python requests snippet that you can copy and paste right into your script.
Standard Python.
And then you just replace with whatever variables you need, and there you go. Yeah. So you don't have, it saves you a ton of typing. And just does it for you, and it's such a godsend, and I love it, and nobody knows that it's inside of Postman.
Hopefully now they do. I mean, that's I'll have to play with it. I have some projects that involve some API reverse, like it's still ESP32 Wi-Fi gizmos that are commercial. And that's all they are, right? So it's probably easier to man in the middle of that. And
yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Instead of dumping the firmware.
I would say the majority of the time that's what I end up doing. Because those web GUIs usually have way more vulnerabilities, and then they have unprotected APIs, like where you do unauthenticated API access, versus reversing the binary.
Like sometimes you do what you know, but it's like I know firmware, so let me dump the firmware.
Right, and that might take you a couple of days. When there's a 30-second thing, but you just didn't try it because you didn't know it. Yeah, that's classic. That's a classic hacking mistake.
And I'm sure the same thing happens on the other side, right? When you have software folks and it's like some crazy encrypted thing, but you could have just dumped the firmware and it's,
it's and you run strings against it and find the key.
Like, oh, whoops.
And that's just IT in general. You tend to always do the things you've always done. And because the things you've always done work, you don't ask other people, how do you do this?
This is like, I know how to do this.
But you run a podcast where you literally do that.
Well,
we're not talking about
people,
we're not talking about anything new here, API reversing and filing keys.
This has all been, literally, right? Everything with reversing, something has already been done. We're just trying to figure out how they did it, and how we do that is
Yeah, and everyone has their ways. Everyone has a bag of tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get out of people's they're tricks.
Yeah. So, what's in your bag of tricks?
Yeah. That's a good
title. You should ask them that. What's your favorite tool in your bag of tricks?
In your bag of tricks.
Check this out.
Reversing tricks.
How do you make your day cheater BS?
I mean, well, I feel like most of us think we're just like cheating through life because I found this trick and now it's easier, right? And
right.
I'm like, I'm not a real engineer because I use all these tricks. Like, no.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you're only one of like 73,000 people who are doing this, which still sounds like a huge number. But when you think of like, well, there's 7 billion people.
Yeah, exactly.
73,000 people. You could fit in a very small sports arena.
Yeah. No, we all still Googling. Like, how do I do this thing in Python, right?
Yeah, and that's what everyone's doing. That's the joke. Is you think you're cheating because you're looking at Stack Exchange. Yeah. And I saw a great tweet the other day. Somebody just sent out just a screenshot of the front page of Stack Exchange.
Yeah.
And it was like, who else has never seen the front page of Stack Exchange? Because nobody has. We don't go there. We Google it and then click the Stack Exchange link.
I think there's an April Fool's as well that they did, and you. Like, I went to the Stack Exchange homepage for the first time.
On April Fool's Day?
Yeah, because I was like, oh, did you see this thing? I forgot what they did. It was, but it was the first time I went to the homepage because I was like, oh, I usually land there some other way. But,
yeah, right. This is weird.
Yeah, the only time you don't use that is during interviews, and that's a whole other stupid argument. Like,
what's that? What do you mean?
Like when you're interviewing for a job. And you have to do all this coding things on the whiteboard.
Oh yeah.
And it's like nobody does this. Everybody would Google it. Like.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't approve of those.
No. That's a whole other.
And on the other side, like if you're not being forced to do the whiteboard thing, people think, where I think they're being told in school or something when they do the resume training and stuff. They said, you say I don't know. If you don't know, say I don't know, but I can find out. People like to hear that, and it's like, no, that's not an acceptable answer. I want to know how you're going to find out. Say I don't know, but I would begin looking on this side of things and see if there's some way to do this and that. Show me how your investigation process. What are you Googling?
Yeah.
Don't just be like, I'd have to Google it, but I could get it. How?
No, like
cool. How? What's
show me your resources.
What's your first Google string? Let's go from there. What are you thinking? How do you think this works? Because I'm asking you this question to see if you understand the functionality behind it. I'm not asking you this question to see if you know the exact syntax for this type of code.
No, you want to see how they think, right?
Right. I want to know that you know how you would go about doing it, not where the semicolon goes. So, which is why whiteboarding's bullshit.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, if you're whiteboarding,
your code would not compile.
You should be allowed.
Of course not. It's on a whiteboard.
Yeah. Right. It's right there. You still got to type it, bro.
Oh,
at the
I'm
very
sure
least, like these whiteboard sessions, guys, allow these people to do pseudocode on whiteboards. Don't make them.
Speaking of interviews and jobs, you also mentioned yesterday that what you do has to deal with, is it preventing people from reversing things?
Preventing people from. That's what Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So I work for an Australian firm called Kasada, and we're a whole pile of hackers who were very, very upset at how easy it was to basically abuse websites for any purpose, be it for scraping to carding to credential stuffing to sports bet arbitrage to what have you, and upset at how easy the problem was to stop, but nobody was going about the defensive method the right way. And so our founder, Sam Crowther, had put together a prototype, and it was really cool. And they actually started as an MFA company.
What's MFA?
Multi-factor authentication.
Oh, yeah.
So it started as an MFA company and they had rolled in, Sam had written up some scripting to defend against credential stuffing for the MFA. He's like, look, this is a really easy way to stop this problem.
And credential stuffing is just when you have a list of usernames and passwords and you just start running them through, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm used to being on
InfoSec. Yeah, I know. I get asked for the audience as well.
Yeah.
We have a lot of hardware folks and.
Right. Yeah. I'm just in the wrong frame of mind. Apologies.
No.
Yeah, so credential
that's
stuffing
what I'm
is
here
like,
for,
it's like you're brute forcing where you go, look, I've got a huge list of usernames, I've got a huge list of passwords, I'm going to see which of these combos works. That's increasingly an active attack vector because of all of the breaches. Yeah, I have.
Ask Troy Hunt, right?
Yeah, and he doesn't even have all of them. And it's funny because there's these collectors out there, like if you remember back in the late 90s, like collecting MP3s was a big thing, and I used to accuse people of just backing up the internet. You'd have music you didn't even like, but you're just trying to have the world's most complete music collection. That's what there's a small group of people where we're doing that with credentials now, where we just want the world's most complete credential breach
just
collection.
Get all of them.
Yeah, and you got to dedupe everything because most of these breaches have all the same credentials in them. And so when you see a news article, it's like 6.9 trillion credentials leaked from a database. And it's like, well, there's about 100,000 unique ones in there.
Yeah.
So let's get this together, folks. And there's some really good journalists that go through and actively try to narrow down how many unique ones in there and get a real number instead of just doing the sensationalist headline. Yeah, it's really hard. Shout out to Zach Whittaker, who's one of my favorite journalists, and he actively does tons of tech work on this side to vet the information he's been giving. He trusts no one and he investigates everything right down to getting his hands on the keyboard and trying the attacks himself.
Oh, wow.
Like, he's really freaking cool.
Is he on his own or is...
No, he's at TechCrunch right now.
Okay.
He's been around. He's at TechCrunch right now, and just follow him on Twitter. He posts all his articles there, and he's just Zach Whittaker, and I believe he's just at Zach Whittaker. You'll find him. He's really easy. He's extremely noisy. So we had developed this system for defending against credential stuffing in the MFA side of things because Sam was like, "Look, it's really easy. You just do this." And by that point, MFA had starting to have a lot of competition in the field. Most MFA systems are all the same. It doesn't matter really who you use as long as you use it. You've got Google Authenticator, you've got Duo Securities stuff. Microsoft has their own now. And so they're like, look, we don't think that there's any space for us. There's room in the space for another MFA provider. However, we have invented this really, really, really devastatingly effective means of defending against credential stuffing. Let's run with that. And they did, and it took off because it's so devastatingly effective. And that's what they ended up basing the company around. The MFA solution's done and gone. It doesn't exist anymore. We don't have it. We now defend against the automated abuse of web infrastructure. And our trick in that realm was instead of trying to determine if something is abused or not and what the attack methodology is and what the vector is and going, all right, what is this?
Infinite possibilities.
Right. Oh yeah. And this is then you start getting stuck with like signatures and behavioral analysis, and that doesn't work because it doesn't scale.
Yeah.
You're always a signature behind. And if you're doing behavioral analysis and machine learning, that means you have to allow the attack to go on for some time before you can determine it's an attack.
Which is not always an option.
Should never be an option.
Yeah.
You should never want an attack to ever succeed for 1 second. And by succeed, I mean like send a request to your server and get a response.
Yeah.
Like you should never want it to get that far, even if the response is invalid login. Mm-hmm. You should never even want that.
Well, that's information right there.
And that's, it has told them that they have a set of credentials that aren't good, and that's very useful information, right? So we developed a method of even being able to stop that very first GET request by determining that this request is being done maliciously. And we do that by way of knowing that 3 to 5 9% of attacks against web infrastructure, against websites, are automated. And really, attacks against pretty much anything on the internet are automated because that's the way you do it.
There's so many things you got to do.
Right. Yeah. It's not.
Doesn't scale. Yeah.
It's not the guy in the ski mask and gloves on his computer in the basement. It's that guy at first. Testing, doing what I was talking about in Postman, where you're figuring out exactly how your automated request needs to look in order for the server to respond to it. Once you've finally nailed down that one that works,
then you automate it.
You write a script around it, and you automate it, and you go get a sandwich, and you come back a week later, depending on what you're doing. Because when I have 6 terabytes of valid credential pairs to try, I'm not going to sit there and type all those in.
Well, no, and there's a lot of systems that will detect the single IP address trying to...
Yeah, and so
that's easy.
The old way of getting around this was, well, you just rotate your IPs. And I guess that's not really the old way, that's the current way.
Yeah, botnets.
IP addresses are effectively free now. It's so easy to get cheap and or free IP addresses.
EC2 instance, DigitalOcean, like all these virtual.
Yeah, and you don't need to even spin up a new machine. You just swap the IP.
Oh, you just ask for a new one.
Yeah, you don't even need to spin up a trillion EC2 instances. You just swap the IPs on your interfaces. And you can get IPs by the tens of thousands if you want, relatively cheaply, depending on what ROI you're expecting on your project. And so now you've got these situations where you can defeat behavioral analysis by way of simply only doing one GET request per IP address. So you get an IP, you send your GET request with your post. If we're talking credential stuffing, you send your post, you look at the response, you ditch the IP and you get a new one. How do you do the behavioral analysis when the IP address switches every single request? You can't, it's impossible. You can try to do it based off of like, oh, well, they use the same user agent and they always provide these same HTTP headers. Well, you just rotate those. You can put garbage data in nearly all of those headers and it'll work just fine. So now, like, you're just, the defense is blind to who you are. They can't collect enough information. And now you're rotating IPs. And you can get these IPs from one of my favorite services. I'm going to talk about my two favorite services for this because this is great. If you kids need some IP addresses that cannot be blocked, like here, let's do what kind of IP addresses is your business not going to allow you to block ever?
Like DNS,
it's going to be, it's going to, here's the answer. In the sake of moving this along, it's going to be residential. Like Comcast.
Yeah.
If you run an e-com website,
you want customers.
Your company's not going to let you block Comcast addresses, especially because they're DHCP.
Yeah.
Like you can block one, and like another customer might get that 2 weeks later, and now you've blocked them, and they're going to go somewhere else. And they're not going to allow you to block mobile IPs, cell phone IPs, for the same reason. And so those are gold. Those are the golden ticket IP addresses because you'll never get blacklisted with those. There's a couple of services you can rent these from. One of my favorites is called Luminati, and they'll sell you, like, for $500, you can get thousands of residential IPs, and they're guaranteed. So if one does get blacklisted or whatever, they'll replace it.
Wow.
Yeah. And you go, well, how do they get?
How do they get boxes in people's homes?
They do. What's really cool about that is those people don't know that.
Is this legit?
Yeah. This is super shady.
Wow.
So what they're doing is, because if you just go to Comcast and go, hey, I need 2,000 public IP addresses. Like, Comcast is going to go, cool, they're $10 a piece. That'll be, $20,000, please, every month. And you go, well, that's not worth it. I don't have $20,000. I'm a guy all I got is a ski mask and gloves. Yeah. What they do is they also run a service called HolaVPN, which you may be familiar with.
Oh, wow, yes.
So HolaVPN is extremely popular, and it's predominantly marketed towards people who want to watch streaming television from other countries.
Yeah.
Right. If you take a look at the HolaVPN services, for at least the free version, it says you agree to allow us to also use your home IP address as an exit node for other purposes. So if you're using the free HolaVPN, you're literally hosting malware. You're an exit node. You're like a Tor exit node for malware.
Wow.
Yeah, because I can go to Luminati, which is the IP side of that, and rent your home IP address and use it, and you never know. You never know.
Unless you're monitoring your own network.
Right, of course,
you probably just want to watch some videos from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm using your Comcast box, too.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite ones on the mobile side is MonkeySocks, which is just fun to say.
I mean, there's Monkey Brains. There's an ISP in San Francisco, but
yeah, unrelated.
Yeah, MonkeySocks.
MonkeySocks, and what they're doing is they have a mobile app SDK that does nothing on its own. Well, it does something, but it effectively gets you paid as a mobile app developer. They pay you as an app developer to roll their SDK into your code.
Yeah.
And they give you the little snippet to put in your terms of service as well that says that you've done this. What that snippet says is by running this, you're effectively turning your cell phone into an exit node. It's the same thing, and that's all the MonkeySocks SDK does. Is it pops open a backdoor and it runs a proxy on your cell phone. Yeah, And so if you got a free app from the store, you're like, oh, it's a good app, it's free, and there's no ads. Something else is going on, and it might be MonkeySocks.
Wow. I'm surprised they haven't. They probably have to work to not get blocked by the app stores, right?
No, because that's allowed. It's in your terms of service. You're telling your users you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yikes.
And so and so now you've got free to cheap, unlimited, unblockable IP addresses as an attacker. It's a gold mine. Now you just get to work. Now you just rotate everything all day, and you're going to get through. Real easy if you're scraping.
Yeah.
You know. So we at Kasada have developed a means of even blocking that form of attack
without blocking legitimate.
While keeping false positive rates insanely low, and I can't give an exact number on that.
Yeah, but that's
I have
the business.
it. I have it. I can't give it.
Understood.
It's preposterously low. I can say it's so low that if I said the number, you would just call me a liar. You would say, "Oh, that's snake oil BS." In fact, and it's really cool. I love working here because the product's so functional. Like I don't have to work here, you know, and they don't pay me to say nice things about the company.
Yeah.
I work here because I love the product so much because it's so devastatingly effective. Like I tell people, like 30% of my day is spent laughing at the attackers.
Yeah.
We do have this problem, however, that a lot of our numbers like that are so good that people refuse to believe that they're real. So one of these side effects of blocking these attacks is the reduced bandwidth. Yeah, reduce and server overhead.
We're all my customers, man.
Server overhead.
Yeah.
You can, you could spin down EC2s. Imagine the cost savings in like a Fortune 2000 organization.
Yeah.
So, and reduce your bandwidth by, 30%. That'd be like, what company wouldn't want that? Because everyone's in the cloud now.
Yeah.
They're paying Amazon, an arm and a leg just to exist. And we had one customer where we had spun the product up, and as soon as we turned it on, their traffic tanked by 98%.
They're probably upset.
They were down to 2% of their starting traffic.
Yeah.
We thought we broke something. Everyone thought we broke something. Everyone was in agreement that something broke. And so we went into like all hands mode, trying to figure out what broke. Because we turned the product off and everything come right back up.
Yeah.
What? This doesn't make any sense. So we start looking at the logs and we're like, everything we're looking at, we're like, this is all appropriate. And we run it through the machines that do, the testing, because you have a trillion requests you have to get through, and looking, and like all the spot testing. We're like, this is all, nothing's wrong. Everything that's being stopped is malicious.
They just have a lot of spam.
And then it we looked at it long and hard with the customer, and that's another thing we do is full transparency. Like we show you what we blocked versus what we allowed in, so that you can do your own auditing if you want and call us liars. We all agreed at the end of this, like all hands, that 98% of their traffic was in fact unwanted traffic.
Ouch.
And it was mostly trying to scrape their website. And given what they did, it was actually a plausible scenario.
Yeah.
And it was, oh man, that was a blast. But if you tell someone like, hey, we stopped
98%.
So 98% of this customer's traffic is malicious. Like they're gonna go, that's a fake number.
Yeah.
These guys are lying, so stop listening to them. And that's actually the problem we deal with a lot, is all our numbers look fake because it's so good. And it's so good, it's because we're attacking the problem from a position that really hasn't been done before. Because everyone's used to WAFs, which are web application firewalls, which generally do passive inspection of the inbound request. They look at the IP address, and they might do like IP address, like reputation scores or something, which is trash because you can just rotate IPs real easy now. They look at the HTTP headers and go, all right, does it have all the proper headers for, what's going on here? Is it responding with the right cookies? It looks at the user agent and goes, is that a real user agent? And it tries to do behavioral analysis on multiple requests to see if it has the same headers and user agents, if it thinks someone's being flaky. Like this is all crap that's so easy to fake, so easy to lie about, that WAFs just don't work.
Yeah.
And you ask anybody who, as a defensive engineer, has to monitor a WAF, and they'll tell you it's the worst, it's one of the worst solutions they have. And it doesn't matter whose WAF. All WAFs are garbage because of this old way that they function. People have found a way around everything that a WAF uses to detect intrusion. So
They just work around it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no reason to have a WAF. No company puts their WAF in line. No company allows the WAF to actively block any traffic.
It's just
they only allow alerts.
A warning sign.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't allow it to block because the false positive rates in WAFs are so freaking high too. Yeah. And so we're like, look, WAFs don't work anymore. This is a great replacement for WAFs because it doesn't do any of those things that WAFs do. What we look for is the presence of the automation client side. We look for something being automated. We don't care what it is.
If it's automated, you probably
don't care if it's a vuln scan.
Yeah.
We don't care if it's credential stuffing. It doesn't matter. We look for the automation, and because of that, like Occam's razor scenario, we don't have to do signatures. We don't have to do behavioral analysis. We can,
but you
and
don't
we
have
do
to. Yeah.
on the back end, but we don't have to do that. We don't have to do any of that client side either. We run a little snippet client side. We do some insanely devastatingly good fingerprinting client side. It's a little snippet of JavaScript. It takes around 50 milliseconds to complete on a mobile phone.
Yeah.
And sends us back that telemetry. And from that, we're able to determine is something being automated, is it not? If we're still not sure at that point, we can send down additional things to check for. Again, milliseconds. Double-digit milliseconds. It's imperceptible to the user. So now, like, you're not creating friction for the user. You're not making them solve CAPTCHAs, crap like that. You don't get the Cloudflare, like, 3 bouncing dots. Like, please wait while we check your browser. And you're like, come on. None of that. It all happens in the back end. And we're really, 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 I can't say the best, but we're
pretty good, pretty darn good.
Yeah, we're really freaking good at doing that fingerprinting and accurately determine if somebody is maliciously leveraging automation against that target website. And
that's pretty cool.
That's the trick.
Yeah, so now people know if that's what you want to do, you get a music scholarship, go to pharmacy or chemistry school.
That is great. People ask me, how do I get to be a pen tester or do what you do? And it's like that. Well, I liked music. I was a concert flautist for 14 years. There's a fun Johnny fact. I played the flute for an extremely long time, and I was very good, and I don't mind saying it.
Hey, I have found a lot of people in the industry are very musically inclined. I'm not, but there are quite a few that are really good.
To be a good hacker and to be a good reverser, especially, it's not required, but it helps to have an artistic background because you certainly need a creative mindset. You need to be thinking outside of the box because what you're literally doing is making things do things they're not supposed to do, not meant to do. You are creating an alternate reality in which this is now how this works. Like the very act of reversing a binary is not how that binary was meant to be accessed. Well, at least not by a human. And so like it takes creativity and a sense of adventure and motivation in the face of perpetual failure. And that's absolutely what the arts teach you, you know?
Keep practicing till you get it.
Right. I mean, in the arts, you know, it's very hard to make any money as an artist of any form, be it painting or music or what have you. And so you must, if you want to get into the arts, you do it because it's something that you love and you're passionate about, and it brings you joy simply to be doing them. And that's what saves you in the face of abject failure. You know, nearly every famous painter of all time was not famous until after they were dead.
Unfortunately.
Most of them died broke and of, you know, some disease that was often treatable at the time.
But they couldn't afford it.
And then, you know, 50 years after they died, somebody found all their old paintings in their attic and went, oh my, Picasso was a genius. Although he was one of the few that did become famous. It was towards the end of his life, but musicians, plenty of classical musicians, like their music was considered trash when they
at the time,
and then it wasn't, and also because most people weren't musically trained to really appreciate what was going on there. And now it's, you know, now every third grader is taught Ode to Joy. You know, we know classical, like we can hum classical pieces by the time we're 8.
Yeah.
Because they're so culturally important to the understanding of what makes music good. So yeah, creativity and the arts are very, 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 very necessary to hacking. And so I would say like that's might be why I like hacking so much. It's that overlap of electronics and art. And I mean, that's what camp is here. Like, you walk around here at night, it's like like an electrical Burning Man. Although Burning Man is pretty electrical these days too.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is. It was. I have not been to Burning Man, but walking around at night here was incredible.
Yeah, I've taken so many videos and so many photographs of just the illuminated installations here.
I need a better camera. Like my phone can't handle some of these things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if you come down here with a great DSLR and some super slow shutters, you can capture some Martian-like landscapes.
I don't know if you somebody climbed up to one of the big smokestacks and took a picture at night.
Oh yeah, I keep getting talked out of that because I was going to do that the past 2 nights, and then my friends were like, "Well,
do you have a harness?
Just left whiskey leaks."
Yeah, you might die.
And I was like, "Yeah, that's what makes me want to go do it." And they're like, "Yeah, why don't we go play pinball?" And then I said, "I like pinball."
Yeah, so we're at I guess an abandoned brick factory.
Well, it's not abandoned. It's been converted into a park.
No, it's a park, but it's not an active. No longer. I guess they are making some bricks for fun. I guess like for show.
And the kilns. There's a very interesting brick artwork because like all the melted bricks all molded together. It's really weird.
And there's a functioning train rolling around.
There is. Yeah, because it's a brickyard. Yeah, there's rails everywhere because that's what you needed to transport.
Yeah, right next to my tent.
Yeah, and there's a contest to build your own train.
I have seen several.
Yeah, and you're judged based on functionality and also creativity, which is always a great category.
Yeah.
It's kind of Red Bull Flugtag style, where even if it doesn't fly, if it looks really funny, you'll get points.
You get some points.
Yeah, and they say you can ride the rails, build something that rides the rails and go. And that's freaking cool. Where else do you get to make your own trains?
No, and they have, it's like they use the hoverboards with some metal plates and you have a train.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I saw that. That's great. Hoverboards on the rails. I can't believe how ubiquitous hoverboards are here versus the US where they're like freaking banned everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is an amazing place. It's absolutely the perfect crossover of artists and hackers, which is all really, it shows that they're the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's my first time here and I hope to become a regular.
Yeah, I've been putting it off for 20 years because it's only every 4 years.
Yes, that's right.
I go, well, I'll have to get it next time. I'm too busy. It's too expensive. I'm too busy. It's too expensive. And then this year I was like, you know what? I will never be less busy. And it will never be less expensive.
That's true.
It will I will only get more busy and it will only cost more. So I have to put my foot down and just eat it and go. And I did, and I am absolutely overwhelmed with the place. I'm ecstatic that I made this choice. I was supposed to go to Tokyo this year for a vacation, and I traded for this. And I have zero regrets.
No, I mean, and I like this every 4 years because if you're like, oh, I got to do this other thing, well, there's always next year, right? And
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep. You can always say, well, this only happens every 4 years, so I'm going to do it. I can go to DEF CON next year.
Yeah.
DEF CON's every year. Who cares?
And for those in the U.S. or near or that want to travel there every other year, there's Tour Camp, which that's what got me into the hacker camps last year.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. It's a much, much smaller, we're talking like 300-400 instead of 6,000+.
Yeah. Are you staying at the Tour Camp here in Milliways?
No, I'm staying at the Belgian embassy.
Oh, okay.
Because, yes.
Well, specify that that's still in camp.
Yes, the Belgian.
It's funny. All the countries have their own embassies here. It sounds like you're staying out in Berlin at the Belgian embassy. I
was like, I grew up born in Mexico, and now I live in the U.S. Therefore, I'm camping with the Belgian embassy.
The Belgian embassy, right?
Hey, they have really good food. Yeah. Well, that sounds like a good place to wrap it. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, this was a blast.
Yeah,
literally just sitting on the dock in the middle of the woods.
This is great.
Doing a podcast.
I'll get a few other pictures and post them. But
excuse the noise, guys.
I'll do my best to edit it out.
I think it adds a lot of flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like we're in the woods with people. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are.
Yeah. All right. Cool. This was great. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you.